Have you ever felt as though God ruined the plans that you had for your book? Have you ever been frustrated by that? And no matter what you tried to do and no matter how hard you tried to work to fix things, nothing worked. Why does that happen? Why are there times where sometimes we feel like God has completely disrupted our writing plans? In today's video, you're going to discover exactly why that happens and how to respond to it and how you can actually come out stronger and better on the other side of those disappointments. Hey y'all, welcome to today's Live with Lisa. If you're new here, my name is Lisa and I create videos that help you learn to write and live God's way. If you're looking to honor God with both your life and your writing, this is the place for you. I also want you to know that we go live every week here in partnership with Our Given Purpose Ministries, which is an incredible ministry founded by my dear friend Tori Slaughter to help you learn to grow in your walk with God and to grow in godly community. So not only do we go live every week on YouTube and on Instagram, but on the Our Given Purpose Facebook Ministries page as well. So make sure you're getting connected there and learning more about that incredible ministry. So, when we go through disappointment, when we feel like God has ruined our plans, like our plans have been disrupted, how do we respond to that? What do we do? How do we deal with it? And how do we get to the place of being able to eventually move on and be able to continue moving through the writing process? Let's talk about it. Let's dive right in. So, first and foremost, you need to know that at some point in your writing journey, it will feel like God has essentially ruined your plans. It happens to all of us. At different stages, it can look in different ways and it can happen in different ways. The details may differ, but the reality is there will come a point at some point in your writing journey where you'll deal with this frustration, you'll deal with disappointment, you'll deal with your plans not turning out the way you'd hoped. And our response to that makes all the difference. So let's talk about what that can really look like in detail. First of all, you can feel like God is ruining your writing plans just based on life happening, right? You have different disappointments and discouraging things that happen, life circumstances. It can be things like a job loss, caring for a loved one who has gotten ill and is struggling with sickness. It can include things like financial hardships, relationship challenges, maybe challenges with your parenting or, different things with family. The reality is whatever that challenge is, it can be heartbreaking to deal with. It can be discouraging and frustrating and just really take the wind out of your sails when you're trying to move forward with your book. Something else that can happen that can cause difficulties and ruin your writing plans in a lot of ways is things like writing block, right? Just good old fashioned writer's block, right? It can be such a source of frustration for so many people, especially when you have a story in you that you know you are called to write. It's just you have the vision, you have the idea, you know how you want everything laid out. Everything feels crystal clear to you, but when you sit down to write over and over again, you go through the process of just hitting a wall and feeling like the words just aren't coming out. It can feel like they're literally stuck in you and you just aren't able to release them. And that can be so incredibly frustrating. I've been there. I have been there many times and for years at a time in my writing journey. So I know that frustration. I know that anguish that can happen when you go through that. And so that can be a type of having your plans disrupted, right? Because no one plans to have writer's block, but it absolutely can happen. Another type of disruption that happens with our writing plans can be just the disappointment and the rejection that happens throughout the publication process, right? And this can look different depending on what type of publication path you're pursuing. So if you are looking to publish with traditional publishing, for example, you'll deal with rejection all throughout the writing process. You'll deal with rejection from literary agents and editors and publishers and and you'll get a lot of form letters telling you, no, this isn't right for us, and no, I'm sorry, this isn't the right book, and we're not going to be able to accept this or sign you as a client. You'll deal with that frustration of people consistently telling you that your book is not right for them. If you're self-publishing, it's a different type of frustration that you may feel, and that disruption of feeling like your book may not be received the way you expected it to be. Maybe your sales didn't go as well as you'd hoped. Maybe people that you love, who you thought would support you, are not there for you the way that you thought that they would be. And so there's a lot of different frustration and disappointment that can happen there. I've done several live streams about a lot of these issues. I did one talking about what to do when life is tough and how to keep going and how to keep writing. So I want to encourage you to listen to that one. I also did a live stream talking about what to do when people don't support you and you feel like you don't have that support that you really need in your writing journey. I did that live just last week. So make sure you check that out as well. I also did one about writer's block and 5 questions to ask yourself when you're struggling with writer's block. So make sure you check out that live as well. And so a lot of these live streams and these teachings will really help you to really make sure you're maintaining that momentum and not get discouraged and not stay in discouragement during the writing process. So make sure that you check those out, and I will be putting those links in the show notes of this video. But make sure that you take a look at those, because those will really bless you and encourage you and give you clear strategies to help you move forward when you're dealing with those difficult issues. All right, let's go into some comments here. Tori says, this is such a timely topic. Our response to what God is saying and life happening matters. Yes, that is so critical, Tori. Absolutely. Our response makes all the difference, because we're going to go through the difficulties, right? But when the way that we respond many times can either, help us to work through the difficulty and be able to come out on the other side with more strength and maturity and wisdom, or we can get stuck and we can kind of flail around and really deal with unnecessary frustration and pain, and it can delay what we're trying to do and what God is trying to do in us. And that's why it's so important that we respond well when it feels like God is ruining our plans. So absolutely, Tori, great wisdom there. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so the next thing we need to know about when it feels like God is ruining our plans is that God ruins our plans. He disrupts our plans because his thoughts and his plans are different than ours, and they're better than ours. Isaiah 55 verses 8-5 tells us that God's thoughts are not our thoughts, and his ways are not our ways. And as high above the earth as the heavens are above the earth, so are his thoughts higher than our thoughts, and his ways higher than our ways. And so think about that for a second. Think about how many thousands upon thousands of miles it is to get above, to get into the sky, right? And to get out of Earth's atmosphere, for example, right? How many just tens of thousands of miles did it take for us to get out of Earth's atmosphere and into outer space? How far does outer space go, right? It's endless, right? And so just if you picture that in your mind for a second, how high the heavens really are for us, right? And how much it takes for us to even get into a fraction of them, to really see them for ourselves. It takes a tremendous amount of effort for us to even get into a fraction of space, into a fraction of the heavens, as the Bible is talking about here. And so it really gives you a clear picture of how much bigger God's mind is than ours, how much more complex his thoughts are than ours, how much more detailed his thoughts are than ours, how much more intricate and amazing and wondrous his plans are than ours. And it's really humbling for us to think about. If you want to get a glimpse of the complexities of the mind of God and just how he thinks and what he's made, I encourage you to read the end of the book of Job. It is a heavy read. Let me warn you now, but the end of the book is really fascinating in terms of the mind of God, the way that he challenges Job about all the things that he has made and all the things that he knows about his creations. And so it is just something to really think about and to understand how much more God knows than we do, and how much more he understands and plans, and how he has truly worked all details into account in a way that we could never do in our limited thinking. Really important to have that right perspective when we think about that. All right. And Tori says, yes, his plans are always better. They are better and they are perfect. And I just want to leave you with this, that we are imperfect people with imperfect plans who serve a perfect God. We are imperfect people with imperfect plans who serve a perfect God. God's plans are always better and they are always perfect. And so we can trust even when God disrupts our plans, it is to always do something better in our lives. It doesn't feel better at the time usually, but the end result is always working for our good. And so I just want to encourage you with that today. Whatever you're dealing with, I pray that that blesses you. Absolutely. And Tori says, I believe you did a workshop discussing setting up a meeting with God before we start the writing process. Yes, Tori, I have mentioned that. I believe I mentioned it a couple of times. It's so important. And I believe that was the live stream talking about the creating a God-centered writing routine, if you want to go back and check that out. But it is so important for us to set up a meeting with God before we start, and to really ask him his thoughts and his mind about our writing and the ideas that he's given to us. It's a great way to even get ahead of some of this frustration that we're talking about, because we can avoid it if we know what God wants us to do and we're clear on that right from the beginning. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Tori. And so the next thing we want to be aware of when it feels like God is ruining our plans and disrupting them, we really have two choices at the end of the day. We can either fight God and resist his plans and really get kind of entrenched in pride and our own way of doing things, or we can choose to let go of our plans, to release them to God in humility, and to embrace his plans for us, to really accept what he wants to do and his way of doing things. Proverbs 19:21 has become one of my favorite scriptures over time. And it really speaks to this idea. It says that many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. And there is so much wisdom in us understanding that and accepting that. It can take time. It can be frustrating at first, for sure. As I said, we are human. And so, it's important for us to understand that, and we may not get there right away. But it is important for us to understand that God's plans, God will have his final say at the end of the day. And so we choose, as Tori mentioned earlier, we choose how we respond to his plans. We don't choose what his plans are, but we choose how we will respond and how quickly we will come into alignment with his plans for us. Even if it does, throw us for a loop, and it may take us a while to get there. We have the choice. We have the option to come into alignment with God's plan and experience his peace and his blessing and his covering us in the middle of that. And that is encouraging. So, what do we do next? What do we do when we feel like God has ruined our plans? Things haven't gone the way that we've expected. We're experiencing the frustration and the disappointment and the discouragement of having our plans not go the way we thought. What do we do? How do we respond? Well, first and foremost, I want to encourage you to take time to feel your feelings and to process them both with God and in godly community. Feel your feelings first and foremost, right? And process them. Take that time to really work through them. I like to say all the time that we are human, we are not machines. And so God gave us emotions, and it's okay for us to go through those emotions and to experience them. And he promised to be with us in the middle of all of that. So it's okay to feel disappointed. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to even feel angry at times. But we want to make sure that we're processing those emotions in the right places. We don't want to, just kind of spill everything on the internet and just vent, randomly to whoever, right? We want to make sure we're doing that in the right places. So we are processing with God, one-on-one in our time with him. And we're also taking time to process in godly community, in people that will support and encourage us and pray for us and stand with us as we're working through the different things we deal with. I like to say this, that, the Psalms is full of David processing his emotions with God, right? He had all these times where he was angry and sad and grieving and lamenting and joyful and grateful. And so we see all the full gamut of emotions with David in the Psalms. And so that is how we are meant to be with God. We are not just meant to share the good moments with him, right? He does want us to do that, to thank him and to show gratitude and praise. But he also wants to be with us in our darker moments, our sad moments, our moments where we don't understand. He wants us to come to him with that and to not just sit in it and to get paralyzed there. So we want to make sure that we are taking time to do that. We don't want to get stuck there. There does come a point where we do need to finish processing and move forward, but we want to take some time to make sure that we're doing that, especially in the beginning when we first experience disappointment. Really important to do that. The next thing we want to do is to ask God what he wants us to learn from this process. What does he want us to learn? What is he trying to teach us through these moments of disappointment and having our plans disrupted? We have these opportunities where we can really walk through that with God. I've experienced that in my own writing journey, of just a lot of disappointment and discouragement from things not going the way that I had hoped. And this can especially be true when you feel confident that you have been in obedience to God. You've been in alignment with his will. You've been following his directions. You did seek him out, and you went to him in prayer before you started writing, and you went to him in prayer through the writing process, and you went to him in prayer, as you were editing and all throughout the process, and you do all of that. And then you still have those plans disrupted. You still have that disappointment. You still have that discouragement. That can be an especially difficult blow. And I know that feeling of walking through that. And I sat before God and I asked him, why did things turn out this way? This was not what I expected. And I've been coming to you throughout this whole process. I don't understand why I had to deal with this disappointment. And one of the things that God taught me in that process was that I needed to trust him, that I needed to lean on his wisdom, that I needed to walk with him and to come to him with that disappointment, with that frustration, and to lay it all out before him, and to trust at the end of the day that he truly did have my best in mind, and that he continues to have my best in mind, and that he has good plans for me, right? And that is a lesson that I believe he wants us all to understand. But there are different lessons in the writing process that he wants to teach us. And so it's important for us to ask him, what is this meant to teach me? What is it that you want me to learn from this experience? What can I do? What steps can I take to going forward as I learn from this? How are you trying to grow and develop me and to help me mature in my relationship with you? And I believe that God is eager to answer that prayer. And he will absolutely speak to you if you come to him in humility and ask him that kind of a question. So I encourage you to do that with whatever plans you feel have been disrupted by him in your writing journey. All right, let's take a moment to answer comments here. Tori says, this is an encouraging reminder. Thank you. You have just caused me to think about Joseph, even with how he must have felt, all while being in the center of God's will. Listen, Tori, you're gonna make me want to preach. That is such a powerful story of Joseph. Yes, everything that he experienced, from being betrayed by his brothers to being thrown into prison for being accused of a crime he did not commit, to being forgotten by the people that he helped. all of that, Joseph was obedient to God. He was in the center of God's will, but he went through all of that suffering. And it wasn't until the end of his story that he could look back and see God's hand at work throughout everything that he went through. And so often that is so true of us, that what we feel, what we experience in our writing journey can cause all of this frustration and even confusion at times, because we're in his will, we're obedient to him, but yet it's still hard. And so we can take encouragement in knowing that God does not waste a thing. Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for the good of those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. Very important there, that we are called according to his purpose. When we are in alignment with the will of God and we are seeking him and we are doing our best to be obedient to him, he promises that he will work everything together for our good. And even if it's hard, it will work out for good in the end. And we can take comfort and encouragement in that. That is so powerful. Absolutely. Love that example, Tori. Absolutely good. And so the other thing we want to do after we have taken time to process, after we've taken time to ask God, what is the lesson in this? What do we need to learn from this experience? We also want to make sure that we are being obedient to God's instructions, whatever he calls us to do next. And it might, in many cases, it will not make sense in the moment. We may feel like, for example, if you are trying to self-publish, if you've self-published a book and it didn't do as well as you'd hoped, your first instinct might be to immediately work on something else, to start trying to do something else and to go into the next project. And God may have you slow down and wait. He may want to take some time and help you heal from that disappointment and teach you some things from what you went through the first time around before he has you take another step forward. He may actually have you want to move forward faster than you would like. You might want to sit in your discouragement for a little bit. And then God says, hey, nope, it's time to move on. I've got something else for you. And so whatever God's direction is, we want to lean in and really make sure that we're listening and receiving those instructions from him about what to do next, whether it's to move on to something else, or maybe it's to pause and reflect and think about what we've already experienced. Whatever it is, we want to make sure that we are taking that time to be purposeful in our obedience to him. We might be tempted to go back to our old plans and try and redo things and try to do the same thing that we did before because it's comfortable and it's familiar. But God says in Isaiah 43, I am doing a new thing, right? And so many times he may be calling us into something new that we didn't expect. And it might be scary, but we want to make sure that we are taking that bold step of faith, whatever it is, and making sure that we are locked in our obedience to him. Always. It's very important. Accountability partners and our support system can be helpful here as well. This is why it's so important for you to surround yourself with people who love God, who are listening to God, who are hearing his voice, and who are willing to tell you what they believe he is saying, and to give you encouragement and wisdom and guidance. Because in those moments when you are tempted to go back and just repeat those old patterns and do the same thing over and over again, your accountability partners, your support system will be able to help you and encourage you to keep moving forward and to pray for you as you go through that process every step of the way. Really important that you have that encouragement and that support system in place. All right. Tori says, delay is not denial. There is wisdom in waiting. Delay is not denial. There is wisdom in waiting. So true and so powerful, Tori. Absolutely. There is wisdom in taking time to hear from God, taking a moment to receive what he is calling you to do before we move forward. I don't know. I don't know if you're anything like me. I have made that mistake before where I have rushed to get ahead of God's timing, and it always stings. It's painful when you're rushing and you're trying to hurry into the next thing. God will take that time. He will slow you down one way or another. And so it's good to make sure that we are taking that time to wait when he tells us to, and to hear what he has to say. So true. So important. So your action step for today is to get honest with God in prayer about how the ways that you feel that he's ruined your writing plans, the way that you feel that he's disrupted them, the frustrations and the confusion and even the anger that you may be feeling and experiencing about those things. Get before God and really get honest with him. He knows your heart anyway, and he's not afraid of your anger. He's not afraid of your discouragement and your disappointment. He wants you, again, as I said earlier, he wants you to come to him with all of that. So take time to do that this week. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're walking through in your writing journey that might be frustrating you and causing you just some challenges, make sure that you are doing the hard work of coming to God in prayer and really allowing him to search your heart and to show you what it is that you're dealing with, and process with him and in godly community. It takes time to work through those issues. And there are examples all throughout scripture of people who wrestled with God in prayer. So we have a lot of examples of that. So make sure that you are taking time to do that. Don't run from God, but run to him. And make sure, that again, as Tori said, take time to wait on God to respond. This is not usually a quick process. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. But when we're willing to put in the effort, we get to experience the healing, the transformation, and the restoration that God has in store for us. Amen. So I pray that this was a blessing to you today. If you found this video helpful, if it encouraged you and you want to learn more about how to live and write God's way, let's make this a regular thing. Go ahead and subscribe and like and share this video with someone you know who needs an encouraging word about their writing process. Someone who may be experiencing some disruption of their own, right? And make sure to leave a comment below letting me know what you're working on and what questions you have about how to write and live God's way. I would love to help you, and I would love to encourage you in any way that I can. So thank you once again for watching. I pray that this live blessed you today, and I will see you next week in the next Live with Lisa. Until next time, take care and God bless y'all.